Today we sat down with our former high school history teacher from Bishop Carroll, Charlie Ebright. We touched on many different aspects of American history as well as touching upon his teaching and baseball career. We greatly enjoyed this one and we hope you do the same.
All right, we're live. Charlie, thank you for coming on.
You bet.
As two guys who love history, it's great to talk with somebody who we know does the same and had an instrumental part in honestly getting that for us, planting that seed. Mm-hmm. So it's a real treat to get to speak to you.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Watched your podcast a couple times, and I'm real honored to be here, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. The birth of the country is a really fascinating point of time. I think the colonists were mostly unified in their frustration of lack of representation in British Parliament, but many remained loyalists and did not want to declare independence. Why do you think that was?
I think mostly, people don't like change, but for economic reasons. I mean, if you look at New York, for instance, one of the best natural harbors in the world. And so, with British ships bringing over all these goods to New York, they don't want to lose that relationship. And things just like housewares, china, for your home, the wealthy New Yorkers, and obviously wealthy people have a lot of influence. So if you get down into the southern colonies, like Virginia, it's the trade, it's the the monetary part of it. So I think people were afraid of change, but they also, they call this, this era of about 150 years between Jamestown and the end of the French and Indian War is the era of salutary neglect, where basically the king is anywhere from 6 to 9 months away with communication between the colonists and London.
What were those 150 years? Like from when was Jamestown to...
So 1607 to 1761. So the French and Indian War was 1754 to 1761. And that was actually the fourth world war for Britain versus France. There were 4 wars of empire. Queen Anne's War, King George's War, King William's War, and then the French and Indian War was the last one. And these were actually being fought in Europe and in the New World and was vastly expensive for the British. And so I think, during that 150 years, the colonies grew and prospered. But especially the independent colonies like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, they elected their own governors. They elected their own assemblies. And they loved that freedom. And it just kind of went away after the French and Indian Wars. They started imposing these taxes, and it was a shock to the system. And those, how conservatives are today when you start talking about taxes, it's a shock to the system, and they don't like it. And they brought with them the knowledge of the Magna Carta from 1215, and then settlers that came after 1628 brought with them the English Petition of Right, and then in 1688, the English Bill of Rights. So they felt like they had the same rights as the British people, but they were being denied some of those rights, like taxation without representation.
Such a fascinating time.
Yeah.
Signing the Declaration of Independence at that time was basically signing your own death warrant. I'm consistently amazed with how bold the Founding Fathers were.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a misconception of why we celebrate July 4th. I think a lot of people think it was the end of, when we gained our independence and won the war.
Right.
But it was the day the Continental Congress approved the final text of the Declaration.
Yeah. It's
fascinating what those guys did.
It really is. The more I learn about it, you look at John Adams as, and John Adams, it's kind of funny to read some of his letters and stuff where he talked about how history would forget him. And for a long time it did. McCullough wrote the John Adams series, and I don't know if you guys have watched the HBO John Adams series. It's incredible history. You guys would love it. Okay. It's about 9 hours long. HBO produced it, And really the first two take you through the beginning to the Revolution. And John Adams becomes this driving force in the Second Continental Congress because all the stuff that was happening in Massachusetts. And I mean, Bunker Hill was just a few miles from his farm, and, Massachusetts militia were dying at the hands of the British, and he's demanding, like, we need an army. And so it's, if you go back and watch some of that or read about it, David McCullough's book is on John Adams is fascinating. And then his book, 1776, about George Washington, is one of my favorite books of all time. George Washington is such an amazing character in world history, let alone American history. What a guy.
Yes.
Perfect by no means.
Yeah.
But just like what he went through.
And the failures he had.
Yeah. Way more failures than successes, and the sacrifice he made on behalf of the colonists and then the American people as president and or the Constitutional Convention, coming back to that. But, he at the beginning of the American Revolution, he told Martha, I'll be home by Christmas. Well, that was 8 Christmases later, and then, they wrote the Articles of Confederation in 1781. The war's over by 1783, and he's sitting at home, and the country's falling apart. And by 87, 1786, 87, you got Shays' Rebellion, and they're like, this isn't working. This Constitution doesn't have a strong enough national government. And so Washington's like, I guess we got to go back to work and fix this thing, And then you bring on a new crew of founding fathers like Hamilton and Madison that are instrumental in the Constitutional Convention. But the revolutionary stuff is really awesome. It's incredible we won. But if you look back at military history, I mean, just, like the Vietnamese War or the Afghan War that we just came out of, when people are fighting on their home turf, it's a whole different ballgame. Mm-hmm. And if you're not willing to use every tool in your military, tool chest, you're probably not going to win if the home team's going,
Right.
Yeah.
This is an embarrassing question for me to ask, considering I think I know a lot of history, but was Washington on the Declaration?
Yeah. Let's see. He was at the Second Continental. Yeah. He was there.
So is his name on the Declaration of Independence?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Do you know what his life or role was at the time of that?
Now, actually, he may have left by the time
a part of the war?
July 4th started, because he was named Commander-in-Chief. And he had to go to Cambridge, Massachusetts to meet his army. So I think he left before they signed it.
Blake, can you look up the signers of the Declaration
So
of Independence?
he was rolling, though. I mean, he was in...
he's part of the Virginia delegation for sure, because he was the only guy that showed up in a military uniform every day.
Okay.
And, John Adams is kind of sleight of hand here, because there was resistance to funding a Continental Army to begin with. And
yeah, here you go.
Yeah, he didn't sign it.
George Washington did not sign the Declaration of Independence because he was serving as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army in New York City.
Yeah.
Defending the city during July of 1776.
That didn't go well.
Was there a part... was there a part of the country, like how you can kind of predict a red and blue state now. Mm-hmm. Was there a certain, was the South more in favor of being a loyalist, or was the North more in favor of being a loyalist, or was it all kind of sprinkled and random between the 13 colonies?
I think New York for sure was more loyalist. And then in Virginia, it's pretty divided, and the South. And, the South was really worried about somebody new in charge. Because they knew that slavery was something that people were already beginning to question. Mm. In fact, when you look at the Declaration as Jefferson actually, his first draft of it that they introduced to the Second Continental Congress, the southern states, it was Rutledge out of South Carolina, there was a paragraph in there about slavery, and they demanded it come out. Where Jefferson, obviously a slave owner, he he denounced the institution, and he kind of blamed the British, because the British were the ones in charge, and they allowed the slave trade into the New World, and he kind of laid it at their feet, which might be a little bit of a cop out, and he promised to free his slaves upon his death and so forth, but
convenient.
But so they took that paragraph out. And so getting Virginia on board really means the South on board, because they're the most influential state in the Union. They're the largest state population-wise, or colony population-wise, and close to 700,000 people at the time. And there's a guy named Richard Henry Lee, who's an ancestor of Robert E. Lee. He came back to Richmond, and that's when Patrick Henry gave his famous speech in front of the Second Virginia Convention, talking about "Give me liberty or give me death," and that convinced the Virginia House of Burgess, I think they called it, and convinced them to vote for independence. The South was very weary of change. And New York was very wary of losing the economic connection to Britain. And so I think those were probably your two most loyalist areas. I could be mistaken on that, but that's kind of what I've read.
When the first shots were fired at Lexington and Concord, I wonder if the public thought that was just a protest, or if they knew right away this was going to be war.
I think it was on. When you start firing on British troops, I think it's on. And it's crazy. 12 of the 13 original colonies, it was mandatory for young men to join the militia. Pennsylvania was the only one, with the Quaker influence and so forth. They had muster days every month, just kind of like our reserves today. One weekend a month they get together and train, and every month they would have muster days where they learned how to march and fire muskets and that sort of thing. So you've got teenagers out there, you've got doctors, lawyers, blacksmiths, every part of the community, mostly farmers. Out there, and they were looking for Hancock, and they were looking for Sam Adams, and Hancock was the money behind the whole thing, and Sam Adams was your community organizer, if you will, down on the docks. These are roughnecks, guys working on the docks. The British are taxing, they're limiting. You have to buy British tea, and where you can import from. And Hancock is smuggling stuff in all the time. And the tax collectors would come, and they'd tar and feather these guys. These were radicals. They were, with the political rhetoric that we have today, you would call these guys terrorists. They would. One of the two parties would be calling them terrorists, and. I hate that we have our rhetoric is so awful.
Who isn't these days, though?
Yeah, right? So
a lot of people don't know this stuff, and that this has happened in the grand scheme of the world a blink of an eye ago.
Yeah,
but they don't know that it's been bad and it's been dangerous for a very long time.
Oh yeah,
way more dangerous than it is today.
Yeah, we had a civil war.
Right.
Right. You think it's bad now? Come on, it's really not.
Well, people don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and then everybody gets caught up, and social media is new and relatively new, and it just all picks. What news do you listen to? And it's going to taint your view on things, and that is the important part of history. To give you context about all of these things, about freedom and taxes and constitutions and what works best for mankind. What kind of government functions best. And that's what I spend a lot of my time with my students on.
Was Lexington and Concord, was that an official army, or was it more of a guerrilla militia?
Oh, it was straight militia.
Okay, so that wasn't like Washington bringing those guys in.
This is the neighborhood. So the militia protects the neighborhood, and for decades. They were mostly protecting the neighborhood against native tribes and stuff like that. Native tribes played a very big role in the Revolution as well. Some of them sided with the British and some with the Americans. Probably more with the British because the Americans wanted to expand.
Right.
Where the British they cut us off and they said, we're not going to go any further. And so, most Native American tribes, sided with the British, and in the French and Indian War, mostly sided with the French. So,
Was that? I should know this. Was this before or after Paul Revere's Midnight Ride?
Yes, right at the beginning, as the British are headed out to Lexington and Concord, word started to spread. And that's when Revere went out and others went out to warn everybody that the British were headed out there, because Hancock and Sam Adams were stockpiling weapons and powder and musket balls out in Lexington and Concord. So what the British were doing, they were going for their guns, and they were going for Hancock and Sam Adams because they knew they were the leaders of the Sons of Liberty to begin with, but also really the resistance.
Is this Connecticut?
It's outside of Boston. So Lexington and Concord are about 10 miles outside of Boston proper. And so they started marching out that way.
To the west.
Yeah. And the militia showed up and sent them packing back to Boston. The kind of cool thing about this is, after that happened, then Bunker Hill happened. And that's when John Adams is in the Second Continental Congress going, listen, people, we got to do something. And there was a lot of resistance from Pennsylvania. John Dickinson was a Quaker. And so you had delegates from each of the colonies, and Pennsylvania had 3. Caesar Rodney, who was dying of cancer, Benjamin Franklin, and John Dickinson. And Dickinson, so he was very much against war. He's a Quaker, and so he was kind of a roadblock. And so John Adams said, before we established the Continental Army, he said, well, we needed somebody to lead the Continental Army. And so before they even had an army, they picked a commander-in-chief. And nobody was going to say no to Washington.
Why? At that point, why?
Yeah, because, he's 6'4". He shows up in a military uniform every day. He's respected. He's a man of few words, as is Jefferson. They're both from the Virginia delegation. And so really, they pick him as the commander-in-chief, and the next thing you know, we have a Continental Army.
Wow.
Yeah, so they kind of did it backwards. They didn't create the army and then nominate the commander-in-chief. So John Adams kind of worked it backwards. Now, John Hancock wanted that job, and he was the president of the Second Continental Congress, which is crazy because you're picking what we called a terrorist a few minutes ago, right, as the leader of the Second Continental Congress. But he turns out to be the right guy because to pass anything in the Second Continental Congress, you had to have 9 of 13 to agree. And when it came to independence, Hancock said, you got to have all 13. We can't start a nation divided,
Wow.
which was very wise. And John Adams is like, what?
But it's a long shot.
I got to get all 13, right? So
imagine getting all 50 today.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's impossible.
It could be for a lot of things.
Yeah, everything. Everything, maybe.
Yeah. I think when it comes to our nation's security, I think you can agree on a lot of things. So like you interview veterans and stuff like that. So you can get all 50 states, Democrats and Republicans, to agree on like doing things for veterans. Tax cuts to companies. That was probably one that I seen most lately. That like 435 to nothing and 100 to nothing in the Senate, where they said for corporations that hire veterans, they get a tax break. And I think almost everybody agreed with that. So, and all 50 states would have probably as well. So, but it's hard to do to get all 13. But I think we owe a lot of that to John Adams, who didn't think he would be recognized, but I think he is. He's getting his due now.
Yeah.
Deservedly so.
Yeah.
When Washington was put as the commander-in-chief. What did that mean? It doesn't mean being the commander-in-chief today. You know, you're the commander-in-chief of the army,
Yes.
right? Doesn't mean you're commander-in-chief of the 13 colonies. Or does it?
Well, the Continental Army of the 13 colonies. It's of the 13, and so different states sent militias. They met them in Cambridge. They didn't really have a lot of money for uniforms and so forth, but they started knitting uniforms and getting them muskets and so forth. So they meet in Cambridge. He started with about 20,000 men, and the first objective was Boston. And it's a great story. I don't know if you guys have heard of General Knox. General Knox was a large man, a heavy man, okay? And what a great general. He marched up, took a group up to Ticonderoga up in Canada, and took that fort and took all the cannon. And they had to haul them back all the way from Canada across the Berkshire Mountains, across the Hudson River. They're building, all these big cannon. And it's pretty amazing. Around the rim of Boston are called the Dorchester Heights. And overnight, while the British were sleeping, they rimmed the Dorchester Heights of Boston with cannon. And when the British woke up the next morning, they looked up, and the whole British fleet is in Boston Harbor. And they're like, oh, damn. We need to get the hell out of here. They could destroy our entire Navy.
Wow.
And so they went to New York. They fled. And, somebody said, I forget who said it, but said they went scurrying like rats. Now, to the British credit, they could have burned Boston. And that would be a tragedy today, because if you've been to Boston, it's incredible. You can go see the history, the homes where these men lived, and yeah, and well, of course, Fenway Park, but that wasn't around yet.
The night I think the country was born was Christmas night, 1776. When
Amen.
Washington crossing.
He wasn't home that Christmas.
No, he wasn't.
No. That was a time it called for desperate measures.
Yeah.
The Continentals are kind of getting whipped. They crossed the Delaware and then marched 9 miles through sleet to surprise. And it was actually German mercenaries that they came up on.
The Hessians. Yeah.
Fascinating, man.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there when you talk about these are fair weather soldiers, so they don't like to fight. Obviously, when it's raining, your gunpowder gets wet, right? But they don't like to fight in the cold. Mm-hmm. The British don't like to fight in the cold, and that's why they brought in the German Hessians, is to just because Washington took his army to Valley Forge for the winter, and that's where that von Steuben guy came in and kind of helped train our troops, become more disciplined. And so to do this surprise attack is one thing. But one thing to add with that is Thomas Paine, who wrote Common Sense, which convinced a lot of Americans to side for independence. He also wrote a pamphlet called The Crisis. And this is an amazing thing to read. And Washington has it read to his men before the attack. And you've probably heard these words before. These are the times that try men's souls, where will the summer patriot now fade from his duty? He talks about freedom is hard to win, and it should be hard to win because it's such a celestial thing. I'm paraphrasing here. But it's very inspiring. This is something I could read to my baseball team before a big game. It inspires his troops. And some of those guys, like you talked about, some of our guys didn't even have shoes.
Yeah, they were barefoot.
Yeah. And so if you read 1776, they take you through all of that, who the leaders are, how they built this, basically these rafts to bring horses across and so forth. It's an incredible story. It's amazing, and it's a true David versus Goliath situation. The whole thing is, and quite inspiring. And I love teaching it. I haven't taught my War and Peace class for a few years, but when I teach government class, I make sure to give a little bit of revolutionary history because typically I teach 20th century stuff. So
How do you not like this stuff?
Right.
It's so great.
Yeah.
9 miles through sleet and snow, a lot of them barefoot.
Yeah.
Barefoot.
Yeah.
They defeated 1,400 and only lost just a couple, man.
Mm-hmm.
Where did this happen?
Huge,
Day?
resounding win.
Trenton, New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Huge resounding win.
Yeah.
That really boosted morale because a lot of those guys were going to quit fighting when their term was up.
Yeah. They had to go. Yeah. I mean, it was winter, but yeah, I mean, the enlistments were short because the harvest was, obviously that was a big thing where people had to go back to their farms and harvest or plant and so forth. And then just illness, smallpox. I mean, just it was awful.
Think of how chance plays a role in history. Like if that battle doesn't go that way, where are we right now?
Well, I mean, you could look at it as chance, or some people see it as divine,
Or opportunity.
yeah, or divine intervention here. I mean, if you go back and look at Washington, how many times he had a horse shot from underneath him, or bullets going through his clothing. I mean, this man lived through a lot and became the father of our nation. Became the father of maybe the greatest nation that the world has ever seen. As a Christian, I kind of believe in a little bit of that divine providence, and I think somebody that should be celebrated, a lot in our history, in our classrooms, and should be, remembered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Remarkable man. Even all his faults and all of his positives, it's just like, what an overall just full human being
The humility
that was.
The humility to not become a king here
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and only serve 2 terms.
yeah.
The
Well,
foresight.
Yeah, and listen, Washington relied on prayer a lot. He really did. If you listen to his inaugural addresses and so forth, he's a strong believer in God, and I think genuinely a good man. It's kind of interesting. There's a video I show my students about how he was married to Martha and he married money. So he was not wealthy until he got married, and her family owned a lot of Virginia, and so he went from just this tall guy to this very influential guy. But his true love was actually a married woman, and from what I understand, he never had an affair with her, and Martha knew. And when he was dying, he penned. Actually, Martha penned it for him. I think her name was Maria Causeway, and she wrote it for him that he regrets being with the
You're
one
kidding.
true love of his life, and Martha wrote it for him.
Wow.
So I mean, he probably could have cheated on Martha, but I don't think he did. There's no evidence that he did. But he fell in love with a married woman, and but from what I understand, never acted on it.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Speaking on the foresight of Washington and the other founding fathers, how do you think they had the forethought of establishing the Electoral College?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, obviously the debate came down when they were writing the Constitution. There was a series of compromises. You had the Great Compromise about the legislature. You had the Three-Fifths Compromise, which is an unfortunate thing to talk about. But again, you're not going to get a new Constitution if you ban slavery in 1787 when they're writing the new Constitution. You're just not going to get. You need 9 of the states to ratify, and there's more than 4 slave states. And so the compromise on the Electoral College was, the founders, and I drive this home to my students, the founders did not believe in democracy. Okay, so it's insane how many people use the word democracy today. If you look at the entirety of the Declaration, you look at the entirety of the Constitution, you will not find the word democracy in it one time. Okay, now democratic principles are throughout. It's representative government. So we get to elect our leaders. That's the democratic part of it. So you could use terms like representative democracy, okay, or republic, which is really what we are. But Some of the founders thought that the people should choose the leader, and others thought Congress. And this is what parliamentary systems do, and most systems around the world are parliamentary systems. So you have to be a member of parliament to get elected prime minister or premier or chancellor. They all use different names. Some even use president. But I think there was this fear of the people choosing. So they came up with this weird thing called the Electoral College. Now, one big factor of that is the states are fearing losing power. So under the first constitution, the states had all the power. The national government was very weak, basically crumbling, couldn't settle disputes between states. The states were fighting against or arguing with each other. There's only 13 guys in the whole government. There's no executive branch. There's no judicial branch. It's just a bad system. But they set it up that way because they didn't trust power. And so when they're writing the Constitution that we live under today, they still don't trust power. And the small states don't want to be dominated by the large states. Just like us here in Kansas. We don't want to be dominated by California and New York. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be told what to do by those people. So they set up the Electoral College. And that gives the small states more power. I mean, and is it fair? Well, if we're talking about democracy, no, it's not fair. That voters in Wyoming have more power than voters in Kansas. And they have more power than voters in California. Voters in Alaska have more power than we do. They have more say when we choose the president and vice president. They have 3 electoral college votes, but they don't have they don't have the same type of population, because you got 2 senators and a representative. That's 3 electoral college votes with a very small population. So I can see why people in California or New York or Texas would be upset with that. But that's the way they designed it, because they wanted to protect the states. And if you do away with it, basically the middle of the country and these small states are going to be ignored. You know, I mean, the candidates for president will only cater to where the populations are.
The coast.
Yeah, the coast. I mean, more than half the population is within 50 miles of the East Coast, the West Coast, and the Gulf of Mexico, Great Lakes, so all around the water. But the people in the middle, flyover country, they'll forget about us. So if you're conservative, you definitely want to keep the Electoral College. If you're more of a liberal, you probably want to go to a popular vote. But here's the fact of the matter. You got to get 38 states to change the Constitution to do away with the Electoral College, right? And that's never going to happen. So we're stuck with it. It's not going anywhere. I don't know. You want to keep talking about, but like Nebraska and Maine do it a little bit different, where they have, Nebraska has 5 electoral votes, and so they just draw 5 districts. So each district has, based on population, gets 1 elector. It's a neat idea. Maine does the same thing. States could go to that. I think that would favor the Republican Party right now. Just because if you look at rural places, it's just like gerrymandering. They're having all these fights over gerrymandering right now. Outside the cities, things turn pretty red, so yeah, we're stuck with it. And I don't know if, I guess I like it. I don't really have too much of an opinion on it. We're just kind of stuck with it.
You don't have to have an opinion on it to realize just how incredible them thinking of this in the 1700s is. Like, yeah. What the hell, man? You're trying to fight the British and you're thinking this? Yeah. Like, you are really a special type of, and maybe you were more thoughtful back then because you didn't have phones and blah, blah, blah. But it's just, regardless of if you're pro or con of it, it is really just an amazing thing that they thought of.
Yeah. I mean, I think it works. There's been, I think, 2 times, you got to get 270, right? Or a majority. Mm-hmm. There's been 2 times where nobody got a majority. So, and this is one of the reasons we're stuck in a 2-party system. Because if you have a strong third party, it's going to be hard for anybody to get to a majority of the Electoral College. And guess who decides? The House of Representatives decides. And that's happened twice. Jefferson was elected by the House of Representatives, and John Quincy Adams was elected in 1824, 1800, and 1824. And you could see that happen a lot more if you had a strong third party. And trust me, I don't like either one of these parties, but they're a necessary tool for our system. You got to have them to organize elections and primaries and to choose candidates, nominate candidates. It just organizes the whole political process.
Do you think that would happen if a third party candidate just split the vote of one party, like Ross Perot?
Ross Perot.
What was that? Was that Clinton and Bush Sr.?
Yeah.
Was that 92?
Yeah, 92.
So, do you think if Ross Perot would have, do you think he could have done that?
Well, the problem is it's winner take all in all those states except for Nebraska and Maine. So if you've got to win 51% or the majority or the plurality of a vote in one of the states to get any electors. So Ross Perot got 19% of the popular vote, but he didn't get 43% or 40% of any one state to win the electors. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I think the last time we had a third-party candidate actually win, I mean, there was a couple where electors changed their votes, but was Wallace from the South in 64. He was the segregationist. So he split from the Democratic Party and ran, and he won, I think it was 5 southern states. And that was 64. Or 68, I'm sorry.
19,
yeah. That was the last time a third-party candidate really won any substantial electoral college votes.
So you think if we went back to popular vote, you'd probably see that a lot more?
Oh, you'd see more parties. You'd see a lot more parties. I mean, there's the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, and I'd say the last 30 years have been on the ballot in enough states to win 270 electoral college votes. So generally, you're going to have 4 choices, maybe 5 choices when you go to vote for president and vice president. And some, that's a great topic too. Is that a wasted vote? If you're voting for the Green Party or the Libertarian Party. I tend to have some pretty libertarian leanings myself, but I kind of see it as a wasted vote. But then again, I'm in Kansas, so I know how Kansas is probably going to go. So if I voted Libertarian, it probably wouldn't hurt, the person I was hoping to win. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump to the 1900s.
Okay.
Stock market crash, 1929.
Yeah.
You hear about the Roaring Twenties. Times are good.
Mm-hmm.
How did the Roaring Twenties create the perfect setup for collapse?
Good times. Getting rich. Most Americans weren't in the stock market, so it's the people that were speculating. And as I tell my students, it's not the market itself; it's the gambling, it's the speculation. And if you look, historically, by 1927, things were booming in the 20s. It was there was a lot of growth, great jobs. Henry Ford's rolling out the Model Ts, and he says, well, anybody that works for me should be able to be a customer of mine and afford to buy the product. And then just all the new inventions being, radio, phonograph, refrigerators, vacuum cleaners, dishwashers, and people are buying on credit. Right? And by 1927, things were slowing down. Production was outpacing wages. So people, even though wages went up a lot, they couldn't afford all the products being produced. So there starts to be a slowdown in 27. But the market keeps going up.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Well, shoot. Yeah. I worry about it. Okay, 46,000. I looked at like the 5-year the other day, and I'm like, wow, it's going up a lot. I'm making a lot of money.
It goes like this throughout long term. It goes like this throughout human history, and then about COVID.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's. I worry about it as I get a little bit closer to retirement. I'm like, pretty soon I need to start thinking about bonds.
But you've had a hell of a run.
Yeah.
For the last decade.
Yeah. Or buy some real estate, something's going to hold its value, gold or something like that. My brother-in-law is a very smart, wise guy, and I'm talking. Should I buy gold? Should I buy gold? He's like, well, if the crap ever hits the fan, can you eat it? No, you can't eat the gold. So maybe farmland,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Something like
Can't
that.
eat your dollars either.
Right.
Or your house. You can live in your house at least.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask, do you think there's any lessons from 1929 that policymakers ignore today?
You know, I mean, we have the largest economy in the world. I think America is still a safe bet. You know, I keep hearing about Trump talking about these trillions of dollars in investment, and I hope it happens. I did read today. There's a couple companies looking at building nuclear power plants in Kansas. I don't know if you guys saw that. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, which, you know, they want to build these AI data centers and stuff like that. You need a lot of electricity.
That's interesting.
But, I'm very pro-growth guy. And so, I don't care who's in power, Democrats or Republicans, as long as the economy's growing. Because when the economy's growing, it solves a lot of social problems. People have jobs, there's less crime. People doing well, they can buy homes, and it feeds on itself. Do I see signs from the 1920s? Well, the tariffs are one, right? So for the longest time, I've been teaching. You've got things like the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, where you do these protectionist policies. And I don't know if you guys were watching the playoffs the other night, baseball playoffs, but Ontario, Canada, has been running advertising in the United States, and they ran an ad during it was the Mariners Blue Jays game, and it was a speech by Ronald Reagan. And I knew that voice, I love that voice, and he's talking about how bad tariffs are, that eventually it leads to trade wars and everybody loses, basically. And so when, I get what Trump's doing. I understand why he's doing it. I do worry about it. But right now, from what I've read, the inflation, the worry of, cost of goods, we just went through a bunch of it, 9% inflation, 40-year high. We've kind of seen, it kind of stabilize even with the tariffs. So I don't know, there might be smarter guys than me doing this, but I think history teaches us that, trade wars are going to end badly because at the time, though, in the 20s, we were producing so many goods and selling them overseas. Of course, our biggest export is food. And from what I understand, soybean farmers are having a really hard time right now. Selling those, and that's an important crop that we rotate through our wheat and our corn and so forth, and so I trust President Trump as far as a deal maker goes. So hopefully he can figure something out with that to help our farmers, but he needs to do it and quickly. So yeah, I feel like we need to make things in the United States that we rely on. I totally agree with that part of it. The pharmaceuticals, the computer chips, these sorts of things. We got to do it here. We can't rely. Taiwan's an ally, but if China decides to take it back,
right?
Are we going to go to war? I don't know if we are or not. But
and they're neighbors.
Yeah,
we got to cross a whole giant ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been there and done that.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, for sure. The stuff with Ukraine is tricky, and this would be very tricky with the Chinese, So, yeah, we're starting, you got to give Biden credit. He did the CHIPS Act, and then Trump's kind of doubled down on it. So they're trying to build these chips in Arizona right now. It takes a while to get it up and running, but we're definitely moving in the right direction on that. We need to do the same with pharmaceuticals. Those would be the big things. Anything that's military equipment related, we've got to produce on our own. And we need to get our shipbuilding capacity back, which means our steel. We got to have steel. And, we import almost all of that. And so, in a perfect world, it'd be great if we could produce steel again and make ships again. And we've just kind of farmed it out, which has been beneficial for the American consumer because everything's cheaper. So as I propose it, it's you got to make a decision, America. Do you want to be able to go buy cheap crap at Walmart, Costco, Sam's? Or are you willing to pay more to have those produced in the United States because you're paying American labor to provide good blue collar jobs to Americans that pay well, because Americans aren't going to work for nothing. So it's a choice we have to make as a country.
Man, it's smarter men than I are taking that on.
Yeah. And I think he's surrounded himself with some pretty smart guys, but he's only got 3 years to pull this off, and
right.
I hope it works. I'm pulling for him. I pull for all of our presidents that things go well. And some people probably listen to this podcast or probably disagreeing with me, and that's okay.
Yeah, totally fine.
Yeah,
totally fine. Differing opinions are good.
Yeah.
I wanted to move to the 30s. Huey Long and FDR. Fascinating rivalry.
Yeah.
Huey Long was campaigning, correct me if I'm wrong, on sharing the wealth, because
Yeah.
there was a massive wealth gap
Yep.
between the elites and the normal people.
Yeah.
But was assassinated before he could primary FDR.
Mm-hmm.
I think Huey Long would be very popular today. You see, look what's going on in New York City right now with Mamdani.
Yep.
And Bernie.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would be very popular today. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, FDR privately called Huey Long the most dangerous man in America as he was preparing to run against him.
There was somebody else. One of two. Who was that other guy? The FDR. He said Huey Long and somebody else.
I know in that
forget who that
36 election, there was a Communist Party candidate, there was a Union Party candidate, there was a Socialist Party candidate. Norman Thomas maybe would have been the other guy. But yeah, I lived in Louisiana for 6 months, and it's Huey Long everywhere. It's fascinating, and he was not only popular there as governor, but he had a following across the country. Where farmers in Indiana that were poor, they were like, every man will be a king. Every man will have a homestead. Every man will have all the things that go into that homestead. Every man will have a car, an automobile, as he says. And he says it with this great, Cajun accent. You can YouTube some of his speeches. But he talks about, what he talks about is pretty dang close to communism. And he talks about the Standard Oil Company and Carnegie and Andrew Mellon and Rockefeller. And he says, the most that they should be able to own in these companies is $1 to $4 million, and the rest would be owned by the American people. Okay. It's an appealing message to the poor, for sure. Unless those poor have plans on, making something out of their life and becoming successful and wealthy because they have a plan and they're going to go do it. Well, this could get in the way of that. But it's appealing. It's the easy way to take from those that have and give to those. That's the easy way, and that, it's an easy message to get out there, especially I think for uneducated people. If you look at the communist revolution in China, who was it? It was the peasants. It's the peasants. It's the poor rising up to take from those that are in power. Now I think, you can do that politically, in the United States, we can do that because we have a system. But for those other countries like China, the nationalist government of China was oppressive and cruel. And so I can understand why the communists were popular in China and how they rose up, because when you have a government that is brutal, you're willing to join this cause and rise up and go to war and fight your fellow Chinese or your fellow Russians and your fellow Vietnamese, Cubans and so forth. Desperate people will do desperate things, and I think Huey Long, appealed to desperate people for sure.
Do you think he would have split the Democratic vote? Because I think about how interesting it'd be to have if somebody else other than FDR was in office when we got pulled into World War II after the Pearl Harbor attacks.
Yeah, so the way they nominated candidates back then was a little bit different. So, we go through these caucuses and primaries. If you go back to like 1976, it was the last time the last time we didn't know going into one of the national conventions who the nominee was going to be. That was Ford and Reagan, and Ford ended up getting the nomination because the party chose him. So back then, the party leaders were the ones that really chose who was going to be running. They didn't really go through this whole primary process and caucus process back then. So it was the party elites. So now the people from this, from some of the states, the party leaders from some of the states might have sided with Long, but as far as if he ran as a Democrat, I think Roosevelt would have won the nomination. Roosevelt was very popular in 1936. He won in a landslide. He had new coalitions building. Catholics were flocking to the Democratic Party. African Americans flocking to the Democratic Party. Laborers, anybody that blue collar, they were all flocking to the Democratic Party. Teachers, social workers, farmers, everybody. I mean, it was a landslide. I mean, in 36, the Republicans had to find a sacrificial lamb to run against Roosevelt. And it was the governor of Kansas. Yeah, Alf Landon. Alf Landon was the Republican nominee in 36. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, Alf Landon won 2 states. There were only 48 states. So Alf Landon won Vermont and Maine.
Vermont.
Didn't
Wow.
even win here.
No, he didn't win Kansas.
Vermont is like the bluest of the blue.
Today.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Only 2 states. So
Not Kansas.
Not Kansas. Wins
Right.
Vermont, not Kansas.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
What a time.
So, and he was opposed to the New Deal and got some of the socialism with it, but he didn't attack it. I mean, they had just created Social Security. I mean, how do you attack helping old people or unemployed people or disabled people? Mm-hmm. How do you attack that? I mean,
Especially coming, you're still in the Depression, but coming out of the Depression.
Yeah. It's like attacking Santa Claus. Like you're the Grinch.
Right.
So he just didn't attack it. I mean, you could build an ideological argument against some of those things or a better way of doing it. But that's hard to do with the American attention span.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So we're heading into the late 30s. World War II kicks off.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you, what was going on in Germany economically and socially for a guy like Hitler to rise to power like he did? Was it the aftermath of the Treaty of Versailles, or were there multiple factors?
That's a big part of it. So you got to kind of look at this when you talk about Hitler. There's a lot of different ways you can go, but I think it's important in history to remember socioeconomics, political, cultural issue. I mean, Nazism could have only happened in Germany. I think historians that look back at this, Germany had German unification in 1871. And this is where and so did Italy, 1871 unification. So the modern nation states, okay? And with that, those modern nation states, you start to see a rise in nationalism. They have their own flag. And as far as Hitler goes, his ideology, it's very interesting. He's born in Austria, border town. He's not German, but he is German. He's German linguistically. He sees himself as German, as do many Austrians on the border and so forth. So German-speaking peoples. And this idea, you can't underestimate the power of Darwin and The Origin of Species, which was written in 1859, about 30 years before Hitler was born. And so by the 1870s and 1880s, they transpose this theory of evolution onto mankind. And it kind of begins this thing, like racial science and social Darwinism. And when Hitler was a teenager in his 17, 18, 19, he's living on the streets of Vienna. He's homeless. And he's reading about this social Darwinism. He's reading about what they call Völkisch nationalism, which is ethnic nationalism of German-speaking people, and they should be proud and strong. And so when you equate social Darwinism, this idea of ethnic and with ethnic nationalism with it, So your German ethnicity, and now you have Germany. The Jews don't fit. They're not of German ethnic background. And so I think that's where he gets his ideology. And then you asked a question about like, what were the conditions? So at the Treaty of Versailles, which the United States didn't sign, really is meant to punish Germany. This is really by the French. Okay, the French were invaded in the Franco-Prussian War in the 1870s, and so this was World War I was the second time the Germans had invaded France, and they wanted that never to happen again. So they create this Rhineland, which is a demilitarized zone. Germans can't send any troops. $33 billion in war reparations had to be paid to the British, the French, and other European allies. The United States had a separate peace. Russia had dropped out of the war. In 17, they had a separate peace with Germany.
God, I wonder what that equates to now.
Yeah. Well, they just paid it off like in 2009, I think.
Oh, my
They actually paid it. I was shocked. I had no idea they were still paying it, and I saw a news article that Germany had just paid their last installment to Great Britain on $33 billion.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's crazy. So obviously, how did the Germans?
Wow.
They lost 2 million men in World War II. They were devastated. I mean, the French were devastated too. The Russians. I mean, everybody was devastated. I mean, we got out of there with 250,000 casualties. The United States. We only fought for 200 days in the war, but they fought for 4 years, and it was awful, right? I mean, everybody knows how bad it was. And so, what is Germany to do? They have basically a civil war at the end of World War I, and the Weimar Republic emerges, and Hitler joins this other party, the German Workers' Party, and then it's like 6 or 7 people, the German workers. It's just they're hanging out in a pub. And we're a political party, and this is what we believe. And what do we believe in? Völkisch nationalism. And Hitler's like, oh, I like that. Because Hitler stayed in the army after the war, and his job was basically to go, because they're basically in a civil war, to go check on these different political groups that are trying to take power. And he's supposed to basically spy on them. And he goes to this one, he's like, I like these people. And so eventually left the army and joined full-time with this German Workers' Party, renamed it National Socialist German Workers' Party or Nazi Party. And but the economy, so they're trying to pay this debt. The United States gave post-war loans to Germany, trying to help them out. Just because what we do, we loan people money and or give people money. And trying to help Germany out, and the Allies owed us $9 billion after the war, and they're trying to pay us, so they're waiting on Germany to pay them so they can pay us. So we loan money to Germany. Germany gives it to the Allies give it back to us, and nobody's getting paid. And so the French, this is bold, during the 20s, literally sent troops into the demilitarized zone of Germany where they knew they had no troops, which is a coal-rich region called the Ruhr region. And they sent troops into Germany to take coal at the gunpoint for payment of reparations. And this would be like say we owed the Canadians money, and they like, you need to pay us. We're like, we can't. And they send their army into North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska and take our wheat as payment. How are we going to feel about the Canadians?
Bad.
So the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler used it as an excuse. And I'm not trying to, but he had all the ammo he needed against the French and the British, the other Europeans from the punishment that came out of Versailles, But by 24, Hitler took over the Nazi Party, and he tried to overthrow Bavaria, the Bavarian government, which is southern region of Germany. He tried to take power, and it was called the Beer Hall Putsch. It's 1923. And a fight breaks out. He tries to take over the government, and like 19 people get shot. Hitler gets wounded, and he's put on trial for treason. He gets a 2.5-year sentence because he represents himself in his court case. Now, treason usually, whatever.
Right.
And gets a 2.5-year sentence, and he ends up serving 18 months. And it's like it's an apartment. He's living in an apartment, having visitors and stuff like that. And that's when he writes Mein Kampf.
That's what I was going to
But
ask.
by 24, guys, the German economy started to improve. Things were getting better. It wasn't until the stock market crashed in 29. So the Nazis didn't really expand a lot through the mid-20s. They really didn't grow until the Depression hit. And Hitler takes power in January of 33. That's when he takes power through legitimate means. You know, he gets the Nazis elected to the Reichstag, their parliament. And because there's 11 different political parties, he doesn't need a majority, he just needs a plurality. And in 1932, the Germans, they won 36% of the seats in the Reichstag. There's 639 seats at the time, and they won like 230 or something like that. And so then he was named chancellor. And then he needed a crisis to become dictator. And so he got, they say a communist tried to burn down the Capitol building, the Reichstag. And there were a bunch of communists in the Reichstag too. Those were the two competing parties in Germany during the time. As I tell my students, like when we were in the Depression, there were a lot of people that favored the Reds, the idea of communism and even fascism as well. And one thing we got to remember here, guys, when we talk about fascism, which is thrown around all the time today, it was not a dirty word in 1929, 1930. It wasn't a dirty word until probably 1936. Because fascism, the Germans were out of the Depression by 36. It worked in Germany. Now, most of that's remilitarization, but also building, the Autobahn and stuff like that, infrastructure. So when Hitler hosted the Olympics in 36, the world came in and saw this modern, beautiful city, no homeless, everybody had a job. And they're like, hey, can we get some of that fascism over here? Because it was working. And Roosevelt tried. If you study the National Recovery Act in 1933-34, they tried to use, fascism is where you have private ownership, unlike in communism, private ownership, but industry is directed by the government. So they're going to tell you what to produce, how much to produce, how much you have to pay your people, how many hours they can work. They can work, what you can sell your goods for. It's total government control over industry. And Roosevelt tried that with the National Recovery Administration, and the Supreme Court struck it, almost all of it down, because you can't do that. Not in America. Not under that Constitution we talked about, right? So, but a lot of people wanted it because they were hurting. And I get that, same with communism, and the communists and the Nazis used to fight in the streets of Germany all the time, man. Wow. They hated each other. And then they really got to do it once Hitler invaded Russia. They really got to fight each other.
Yes, they did. Yeah. Perfect segue.
Yeah.
The Nazis take power. The world's at war. Blitzkrieg's in full effect. Operation Barbarossa. The Nazis attack on Russia, open up an eastern front, begin to fight a two-front war.
Bless the British.
Yes. Do you think the Germans fighting that two-front war was still fighting Britain? Do you think Barbarossa was ever realistically winnable?
I don't think so. You can't blame Hitler for thinking that Blitzkrieg could conquer anything. If you look at the war on the Western Front, at least on the...
They took France in 3 days.
Yeah. Well, they took 6 countries in 9 weeks.
How about France saying they never want Germany back because that's the second time in 1920s? not even 15 years later, they just run through you again.
Yeah. 1940. It's sad. They built this. The French built the Maginot Line along their border, but they didn't think to build it up along the Belgian border where the Germans invaded in World War I.
Yeah, through the Ardennes.
Yeah, well, and through the Ardennes it's a really dense forest, but you've heard of German engineering, so you can blow a path through the forest and build pontoon bridges through the forest. So, yeah, I mean, I think the French were a little overconfident in their defenses. And I think, air power is the key, at least on the Western Front. I mean, when you get out to Russia, I think it's just like an unlimited supply of soldiers to throw into the fight. Yeah, attrition and
distance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Napoleon, right? He tried it, and the winter, it's brutal. It's crazy. If you look at Moscow, like on a map, and you kind of follow along where it is in Canada, it's way up in Canada, Moscow.
Russia.
Yeah. Moscow, as far as latitude goes, it is very far north.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So, and they have that Baltic Sea effect, North Sea effect, where they get the heavy snows like Buffalo, New York. The lake effect snow. So, I mean, we're in the jet stream here in Kansas, where, the wind's always blowing out of the north or the south. We're in that jet stream, and Russia's in that jet stream too, coming down from the Arctic. And the winters are, so Hitler had to know that. And I think his biggest, maybe if he started earlier, like he didn't invade till June 22nd. That's when he started. And he's leaving from Poland, because he controls half of Poland. Russia controls half. He controls half. And so he's got to get through Poland and then through what is today Ukraine and Belarus, and then try to get to Moscow. And he makes it 15 miles before the winter sets in, 15 miles from Moscow. But that gave Stalin time to, reinforce and begin to counterattack. And then obviously Hitler wanted to take Stalingrad, which bears the name of the leader. Mm-hmm. And that fight down there, that's the war right there. If you're coming here from another planet and you're like, teach me about World War II, that's where I'm taking you. I'm taking you to Stalingrad. More people fight there, more people die there than in any other part of the war. And it's hell on earth.
25 million Soviets died before 1945.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
25 million?
Yeah.
And it's...
How many Americans died in World War II?
400,000.
It was almost 20% of Russia's population, I believe.
It's crazy.
And people wonder why the Russians are the way they are.
Oh, they're tough, man. Russian history.
Well, how they trust nobody.
No, true. Yeah.
25 million people compared to us at 400,000.
Yeah.
That is
now a lot of it's
unbelievable.
Stalin's fault. The scorched earth thing he did. If you look at Ukraine today, like there's massive population. Most of the Russians live in the West. Most of their population is there, and as they retreated, they destroyed everything that the Germans could use. But what about the people that live there could use? They're literally digging holes in the earth just to find shelter. There's no shelter. These people are starving to death. Most of it's starvation.
But they're thinking, if we don't do this, we're France. And Germany's going to conquer all of Europe and Asia.
Yeah, you got to save the motherland.
Yeah.
It's...
You have no choice.
Yeah.
And war isn't pretty.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad, the Soviets were on our side. They took the brunt of it.
Yeah, they did.
Western Europe surrendered before too many people died. They gave up. Hitler didn't have to kill a lot of Frenchmen. He didn't have to kill a lot of Brits, or people from the Netherlands, and he just didn't have to kill that many. They took the hit for us, and the Chinese took the hit.
Churchill was instrumental as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting the difference in fighting between that Eastern Front and the Western Front. You have the war of attrition, fighting on the Russian border. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, versus the RAF, the Royal Air Force, on the West, in the Western theater, and it's just fascinating the differences. And
yeah, I think British survival here was so key. To launch liberation of Europe for the United States. Once, we didn't get it. We still didn't get it. France is overrun, Britain's being overrun, and the United States is staying out of this thing.
What do you think?
Crazy.
What do you think Churchill felt and thought when Pearl Harbor got bombed? Like, before he talked to Roosevelt, what, in your opinion, went through his mind? Hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think so
I
too.
mean, he's been begging Roosevelt for years for help, and I mean, we're helping. By 1940, you got the Lend-Lease Act and stuff like that, and there were other things we were doing to try to help. There's so many interesting stories with that. Our ambassador to Great Britain, as Hitler was seizing power and threatening the rest of Europe, our ambassador was Joe Kennedy, which was JFK's father. And
God.
we had to withdraw him because he was like, we shouldn't help the British, basically. And Charles Lindbergh was the same way. He had that America First committee. And because isolationism was so inbred in the Americans by this time, they did not want to get involved. The American people, and Roosevelt's a politician. And our members of Congress are politicians, and they're going to go with the people. If 75% of the Americans in 1937 supported an amendment that would require a popular vote to declare war, take that out of Congress's hands and put it in the hands of the American people, because they didn't trust Congress. They said, no, we want to decide if we're going to send our sons, our fathers, our brothers and sisters over there. We want to decide, not Congress, because they didn't want to do it. And so that was like, through the DNA of Americans through the 30s, do not get involved. It's not our thing. Okay, so Pearl Harbor, changed that in a heartbeat. Britain was our best friend, and they were under, the gauntlet for 6 months, And so, yeah, you talked about Churchill. Just the stubbornness of the British and Churchill himself, the fact that he stayed in London during the Blitz, and the royal family stayed in London during the Blitz. They took the family jewels out, but just in case, sent them to Canada, but they stayed. I don't know if you guys ever saw that movie, The King's Speech. Have you ever
No.
seen it? It's fantastic. The king at the time had a stuttering problem. And, Churchill's was great giving speeches. He's legendary.
Yes.
But the king couldn't make it through a speech without sounding like a whimpering idiot. And so this movie called The King's Speech, it's great. They try all these methods with stuttering, and finally they hire this quack that uses unorthodox methods. And it's funny to see, the King of England, this prim and proper guy, what the method he used was just like screaming cuss words. I could do it on here, but but just, it's funny to watch, and the people watching this going, what is going on? But he's able to get through a speech, it's the King of England, we're under attack, we got to be strong. And he gets through that speech without stuttering. And so, yeah, that's a subject that I could talk about all day, is the Battle of Britain. Obviously, the military side of it, the Spitfire, plays a huge role, and just the pilots, the guys that were going up against German pilots that had been at this since the Spanish Civil War. German pilots were flying from 36 to 39 in the Spanish Civil War. They were flying over Poland, as they went into France. So these guys had a lot of combat hours, and the British hadn't. And they were short on pilots. So this is where you got Czech pilots flying for the RAF, free Polish pilots flying for the RAF. The communication is crazy. And then a few Americans. Like the first American to die in World War II was an American civilian pilot. It was illegal for Americans to come over and fight. Through the neutrality acts that we passed, you couldn't go fight. And there were ones that Americans that went and fought in the Spanish Civil War to fight fascism there. And so what pilots would do, civilian pilots in the United States would do, is they would go to Canada, get fake passports, fake papers, and then go over and fly for the RAF. And one of those guys was a 1932 bobsled gold medalist pilot that went over to fly for the RAF. There's a great book called The Few by Kershaw. that describes these American pilots that went
Wow.
over and fought for the RAF. It's fabulous. Great book. Tom Cruise was supposed to make a movie about it, but I guess they had to do another Mission Impossible and stuff. I was like, dude, Tom Cruise in this movie? Yes. No, didn't happen.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So we get pulled into the war, December of 1941. Yeah. I want to talk about the Western Theater, the island hopping in the South Pacific. I feel like the Eastern Theater gets more of the shine. I think that's due to Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers. But the Marines fighting in the South Pacific, and it's specifically fighting the Japanese, the Japanese military and the country as a whole, it's something completely different than I think anywhere else in the way that they'll fight to the last man, woman, and child, and the savagery of the Japanese military. Iwo Jima, Peleliu, Guadalcanal. The fighting in the South Pacific was just insane.
It's horrifying. I think for context, I think it's important to understand, how the Japanese became so fanatical, and they were fanatical. And I say this now as, they're one of our best allies. I don't want to offend Japanese people. But the Emperor Hirohito was seen as a godlike figure. He was said to be a descendant of the sun god. And so the worshiping of Hirohito is similar to what you see with your radical Islam, jihadists that believe, if they die fighting for Muhammad or for Allah, what they will receive in the afterlife. And you guys probably have heard that, the whole 72 virgins thing. Well, for the Japanese, the afterlife would bring great wonder for you, but it's also based on honor. So you cannot dishonor your country, your emperor, your family. And so this is one of the reasons why the Japanese treatment of prisoners of war was so bad, because the Japanese believed that to surrender is dishonor. It brings dishonor upon you, your family, your country, your emperor for them. And so that's why they would fight to the end. They very rarely would they surrender. So like you talked about Iwo Jima. I mean, they had over 20,000 men. I think we captured 20 something. Okay, you had to go into the caves, and get them, or by this time we're using flamethrowers, and sometimes you have to send in tunnel rats like we did in Vietnam and stuff like that. And but yeah, each island is a different story. Guadalcanal was the first, so that was a precursor to everything to come, And it's a great Guadalcanal's a crazy story because, they drop these Marines off on this tropical island, and they're supposed to bring in supplies, more troops, and all that, medicine, ammo, and the Japanese counterattack before those supply ships can get in. And this battle of Savo Island, and they kick our ass. And the aircraft carriers got to get out of there. We can't lose our aircraft carriers. I mean, that's like Washington. You can't give up the Army. You can't lose the aircraft carriers. So they bug out, and the transports bug out, and you've got something like 8,000 Marines on this island by themselves. And the good thing was, at the beginning, we surprised the Japanese. So we took the airfields, because on all these islands, right, the main purpose for taking these islands is the airfields. Because if we bring our Navy in and they have these airfields, they're going to sink our Navy, and we got to take the airfields so we can use them against their Navy. And so it's a sacrifice that we had to make with these men. I mean, it's horrible. But yeah, so Guadalcanal, I mean, those guys fought for weeks on their own until we could get troops back in there. And the Japanese counterattacked. They sent more troops in, and it was hell for those guys. And so they could tell everybody else that was headed to the Pacific, this is what it's going to be like. And Peleliu is, that's, Iwo Jima, it's a totally different kind of battle. And then Okinawa is probably the worst. I mean, we lost 12,000 Marines on Okinawa.
Okinawa was fascinating because they let the Marines come on the beach uncontested.
Most of them, they let them come on.
Oh, most.
Yeah, most of the islands, the Japanese let us come on.
Just like to set a trap.
Well, yeah, on most of the islands, Germans did this in Italy as well. Is that they set up positions for pillboxes for machine guns, artillery, and so forth. So the idea was that, unlike D-Day, where you've got the cliffs, these are beaches. So you don't really have those good positions on the coastline.
Gotcha.
At least altitude wise. So the idea was to hide in there, and then once they came out, Iwo Jima, they let them come on, and life expectancy was very short with those first waves on Iwo Jima, just like D-Day, But yeah, God bless those guys. The sacrifice that they made for us, and this is a tough one. You talk about the end of the war with the atomic bomb, and the kamikazes. We lost over 5,000 sailors from kamikaze attacks, and double that wounded. And so if you put together, Iwo Jima, 8,000 Marines, the worst battle in the history of the Marine Corps, 12,000 Army and Marines on Okinawa. That's 20,000. Take another 5,000 with the kamikazes and the other islands. It starts adding up, and so when we start thinking about taking the mainland island of Japan, the estimates start shooting up how many men you're going to need, and then how many are going to die. And we don't really know how the Japanese are going to behave. How are the Japanese civilians going to die? Or would they rather kill themselves? If Saipan was any indication, if you learn about Saipan, Okinawa has indigenous people on it. Okay, Iwo Jima is a volcanic thing, so there's no people live there. Saipan they had Japanese or indigenous people living there. And so when we took Saipan, the Japanese had brainwashed the civilian population to think that the Americans, if they caught them, if they captured them, that they would rape and torture them. And so on Saipan, over 1,000 civilians took their own lives. They jumped off cliffs at a place called Marpy Point.
Wow.
My God.
Horrifying. Our soldiers had to watch this. They had Japanese, civilians saying, hey, they're giving us food, they're giving us water, they're treating us good. Please don't jump. Please don't jump. Families are hugging grenades. They're slitting the throats of their children before they jump off of cliffs. It's horrifying. So our troops are watching this, and they're going, oh, my God. And on Okinawa, we're dealing with a fanatical enemy here. Mm-hmm. On Okinawa, they would attack at night. They like to attack at night. So you set up your perimeter, and the Japanese would send civilian women and children into our lines at night, and they hear anything, they start shooting. You wake up the next morning, and you see that you've murdered these women and children. That impact on our soldiers is lifelong, and so when you talk about the atomic bomb, I think you've got to take all of this into consideration, mm-hmm. and put yourself in the shoes of an American GI that fought for 3 years in Europe, and now he's on a ship headed for the Pacific. And he hears that we've ended the war with 2 atomic bombs. Okay. Yeah, you know what I mean? So,
right.
I teach at a Catholic high school, and I definitely know just war theory, and I understand it doesn't fit. I understand that.
Puts it into perspective that one atomic bomb wasn't enough.
Yeah, that's debatable, right? Did we have to use the second one? I don't know.
May not have been enough.
Yeah. Here's another consideration that a lot of people don't know about. Okay. When we won on VE Day in Europe, which is May 8th, 1945, the Yalta Conference, Stalin agreed to declare war on Japan 3 months to the day after victory in Europe, which would be August 8th, 1945. We dropped the first atomic bomb on August 6th. Okay. So he had, before the Japanese didn't surrender, I believe, till the 16th. Stalin had about 2 weeks to get his troops into China, where the Japanese had occupied part of China, and into the Korean Peninsula before the war ended. And what is going on the north side of the Korean Peninsula today? It's a communist country, right? One of the worst on the planet, one of the worst countries on the planet. That doesn't happen if we drop the atomic bomb a week earlier. He doesn't declare war. He doesn't get his troops into the Korean Peninsula. And Korea may be a unified and free country today. Wow. The timing here is very important. So August 6th, the first bomb. August 9th, we're trying to end the war. Mm-hmm. Truman's trying to end it. Truman trusted the Soviets. There were others in our government did not, especially guys like Patton, who might have been dead by then.
I don't know.
When did Patton die?
George Patton.
George Patton.
Yeah.
You really think that played into it?
Yes.
Dropping the second one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
December
Okay.
21st, 19.
Okay.
That's
So
it
he was still
leads.
alive. He was still alive. Okay.
Wow.
So we were just dying to finish this thing off. Obviously,
Yeah.
but for other strategic reasons.
I think that it played a role. That invasion by the Soviets was called Operation August Storm. And it had long-lasting implications that we're still feeling today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah. And that Yalta conference.
I didn't either.
Yeah. The whole Yalta conference thing is super interesting to study.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
Yeah.
that.
So this is taking place in February of 45. We don't have the atomic bomb till July. Roosevelt is still president. Roosevelt dies in April 12th. So in February, you guys know where Yalta is? It's on the Black Sea. It's a resort on the Black Sea, which the Russians now control again, which used to be part of Ukraine till 2014. But so anyhow, Stalin claims a fear of flying. And so you got Churchill, who's no spring chicken, right? And you've got Roosevelt, who's a paraplegic and is within a couple of months of death. He's got to fly all the way out to Russia. And Churchill comes out there, and Churchill wanted to meet with Roosevelt before they went out there. And Roosevelt refused. He didn't want Stalin to think that we weren't being honest brokers. Or there could be other reasons that we can speculate on. But so at Yalta, Churchill was notoriously a night owl. He liked to drink, and he stayed up late, worked late into the nights, and then
Circle back, because I do want to speculate on that. But keep going.
Okay. And Roosevelt's like Joe Biden was his last year. You know what I mean? He's just like,
Sure.
yeah, he's old.
The end.
And he's tired. And so Stalin would hold the meetings late at night. He set Roosevelt on one side of the resort and Churchill on the other side of the resort and kept them apart. And so Stalin demanded, he wanted Poland to be communist. And Roosevelt and Churchill said no. And then he wanted half of all the reparations. Well, how did reparations work out after World War I? Well, it led to World War II. Mm-hmm. We didn't end up taking any reparations. The Russians did out of East Germany. He wanted some Japanese islands. Okay, you can have them. Okay, and he said he'd join the United Nations, which he did, but then he demanded 2 seats. And then he said he wouldn't interfere in Eastern Europe, which was a lie. Okay, so when the Red Army went in and helped defeat Hitler, they basically never left for 40 years.
Had Berlin been split by when Yalta happened?
No.
Okay.
No. Because Berlin May is so the war in Europe is VE Day hasn't happened while they're meeting at Yalta. They know it's going to happen.
Okay.
It's over, but it's not over. They haven't surrendered yet. Hitler's not dead yet.
Okay.
So
Wow.
Hitler dies same month, April too, like Roosevelt. They both died the same month, and they both took office.
Maybe.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I'm not going there. But I mean, I can tell you what I know, but or think I know.
Maybe though.
Yeah. So anyhow, this Yalta thing, like this is setting the new world order after what Europe's going to look like after the war. I mean, that's basically what they're doing. And well, Stalin lied, you know. And why did Roosevelt Church? So you talk about Berlin. You know, our troops, the ones that landed at D-Day, and all the millions that came after them. We had about 2 million guys in Britain that came across the channel, and eventually it took time. But as they walked across France, they knew if we took Berlin, the war was over. There was a song about it. Okay, if Noah Johnson was here, he could sing it for us. Okay, but as the Yanks go marching in, and Eisenhower and Roosevelt decided to let the Soviet Union take Berlin instead of us. And this made it easier and Prague. We wanted to take Prague because you got to hold Stalin's feet, make him keep his promises. But we didn't. We didn't take those. We let him take Berlin and Prague.
As an act of good faith?
No, I think to save American lives.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let the Russians do it. And the Russians wanted to do it because they were pissed.
And they lost 25 million people.
Yeah.
They were pissed. Oh, and they had their way with Berlin too, right? I mean, like the rapes and Hitler wouldn't let the civilians leave Berlin. And so the women were there. The men were all gone. The only people still fighting to hold Berlin were 13, 14, 15, and old
elderly,
men.
yeah.
Yeah. So when the Russian troops came in, boy, did they behave badly. That wouldn't have happened had the Americans taken Berlin. The rapes were...
Anarchy.
Oh, my God. It's horrible. Looting, rapes, yeah, and even for people that, you know, we hated the Nazis, you know, you just don't wish that on anybody, you know. So, yeah, Stalin doesn't keep his promises. So let's circle back.
Yeah, why did FDR
Let's get into some conspiracy
maybe
stuff
not want to see Churchill before Yalta?
Why not?
Yeah. Now, okay, one could surmise that Hitler's been bugging the shit out of Roosevelt for 4 or 5 years now, right? Like, help, we need you to get in the war, help, get in the war, He's just tired of Churchill.
For good reason, though.
Could be a thing.
Churchill side.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like logical reason.
Yeah. Or he honestly said, I don't want Stalin to think that I'm being a dishonest broker, that it's 2 against 1. Okay, so we know that the Soviets were using spies during the war. Okay, so the Manhattan Project's a perfect example, right? So they had 2 spies working on the Manhattan Project to build the atomic bomb. And that's why it only took a couple of years after we built it for the Russians to build it, because they had the secrets. So when the war was over, we got into the Cold War. And of course, if you get into the 50s, you get into McCarthyism and stuff like that. But during the war, this is important. There's military intelligence. There's a project called Venona Project, which is tracking messages from the Soviet Union to spies in the United States. Now, they're using code names and stuff like this, so we can't put 2 and 2 together. Like, who are these spies?
But we know they're here.
Oh, they're spies. Well, usually they recruited Americans that were sympathetic to communism. Okay, and there were quite a few of those. Did you guys see the movie Oppenheimer?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a lot of connections there where, you know, he has friends with some communists, and it's very suspicious. And so we find out later when the Soviet Union collapsed, they opened their archives for a short time, not very long. Germany opened all their archives, and the East Germany. So we learned a lot about how the Stasi, their secret police, worked. But the spies in America, we find out this guy named Alger Hiss. Okay, he's a key State Department official. The State Department deals with diplomacy. So we got Marco Rubio in there, and he's working deals with other foreign ministers and stuff like that. So this key State Department official, Alger Hiss, is at Yalta, and he's advising President Roosevelt at Yalta. It's pretty well thought that Alger Hiss was a Soviet spy. Wow. And when they opened the archives, we were able to start putting two and two together. And there were a lot of Soviet spies in and around the Roosevelt administration. The assistant director to the OSS, the OSS is the precursor to the CIA. It's the Office of Strategic Services. It's run by a guy named Wild Bill Donovan. Okay, and this guy had a lot of power, and he was great, I think. And I don't know if you can trust those spooks. You know what I mean? He was the first kind of spook, and his chief assistant turns out was a Soviet spy. So this would be like the chief assistant to the director of the CIA being a Chinese spy or an Iranian spy.
Wow.
It's crazy. They infiltrated almost every part of the government. So Stalin knew a lot. And maybe Hiss was advising Roosevelt. Let Stalin let him go along with him. You know what I mean? Don't hold his feet to the fire. And so they accepted some things at Yalta that maybe they shouldn't have. And maybe we should have taken Berlin, But it was a decision by Eisenhower and Roosevelt, I think mostly to mop up German troops because we started moving pretty fast once we crossed the Rhine River. We were, after the Battle of the Bulge, we were kind of kicking ass from there. And the end was in sight. We could save lives if we didn't take Berlin. I think that's what they did.
I think so highly of Dwight Eisenhower, and I loved his parting speech warning of the military-industrial complex. What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I agree with him. I think that, when we wrote our Constitution, we put a civilian in charge of the military. The top generals are not in charge. It's a civilian. You know what I mean? And that's distrust of power. And I think Eisenhower, as you're going through the 50s, he wanted to end the Korean War, and he did. He threatened nuclear war against the North Koreans, got an armistice. That's where we're at today. But no new wars after that. Eisenhower focused on nuclear weapons instead of a massive army. Because massive armies get bored. You know, I mean, we have a tradition in this country of keeping a small standing army during peacetime. World War I showed us we could mobilize for war rapidly and be an effective fighting force. World War II showed us we could do that again. So, I mean, if you go back to 1917 when we got in World War I, we had the 17th largest army in the world behind Romania.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tiny. We had about 100,000 men in the Army. The Navy was the third largest in the world, which is something always to remember. We have to keep a strong Navy. So if you're going to cut military budget, don't cut the Navy. We need it. But anyhow, back to Eisenhower. Small standing army, focus on atomic weapons, which are much cheaper than, and hopefully you have sanity at the top where nobody pulls the trigger. But I think that industry in this country, I mean, if you look at your McDonnell's, Douglas, your Boeings, your Raytheons, these companies, they need to stay busy. And wars really help with that. I think if you look at the Ukraine situation, the fact that we have given so much military aid has, one, drained our stockpiles, but two, allowed us to rebuild our stockpile with better and more modern stuff. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The war in Afghanistan, 20 years. I don't know. I don't know if you guys remember the number of how much military equipment we left behind over there.
Lots.
Yeah. I heard like $87 billion worth of military equipment.
I don't know the figure, but it's too much.
So we got to replace that.
Yeah.
So nothing like a good war for the industry, right? And I think definitely Eisenhower's on top of it. I think before JFK was assassinated, there was no real indication that he was going to expand that war and send more troops over there. Now, while he was alive, there were 16,000 Americans over there advising the South Vietnamese. So he did do that. Or what was a continuation of what Eisenhower was doing in Vietnam. Because Vietnam encompasses, I think, 6 different presidents. I mean, it starts with, the Vietnam War for the Vietnamese really starts in 1946, 47, and lasts till 1975 for the Vietnamese. For us, active military involvement, 64 to 75. But we were aiding the French to start, and then the French did what they do. They lost their will to fight, and they got out of there.
Nothing new.
Yeah, and then arming, just trying to help the South Vietnamese. I don't think Kennedy was going to expand it, and depending on which conspiracy theory you believe on with Kennedy.
So they killed him.
Who? The ones that wanted war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, It didn't take long for Lyndon Baines Johnson. I mean, you had this thing called the Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964. I don't know, maybe a year and a half after Kennedy was
that a
set.
false flag?
To this day, I'm not sure we can prove it.
I'm with you.
And it's not the first time. I mean, go back to the Spanish-American War. The Maine blowing up in Havana Harbor. I think they've kind of proven that was internal combustion. Like the furnace was up against where the munitions was on the same wall. Overheated. Boom.
Wow.
Let's go get the Spanish.
Right, and it was Remember the Maine.
Yes, remember the Maine. And while we're at it, let's just go ahead and take the Philippines.
God.
Which, yeah, I mean,
It's just crazy.
That's imperialism.
I ain't saying you're wrong.
Yeah. Now, we didn't take Cuba. I mean, we didn't keep it, but we kept the Philippines.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So let's jump to the 70s. I wanted to get your opinion on the road to 9/11.
Okay.
The Iran hostage crisis, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. How did all this end up happening?
Yeah, two, seriously big events here. As far as the Iran situation, I think it's important, these are the Persians. The Iranians are Persians. They're a good people. They're not our enemy. The people of Iran are not our enemy. And we had a great relationship with them going through the 70s. Now, the problem is their leader at the time was the Shah of Iran. He's a military dictator. He's mean. He's cruel. And I think this is something that a lot of people miss in the Middle East. Prior to 79, almost all of these Middle Eastern countries are ruled by dictators. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is radical Islam is dangerous. It's dangerous to everybody. It's dangerous to the leaders. It's dangerous to neighbors. It's dangerous to the world. Moderate Islam is not. So what these dictators did generally is kept the radicals in their countries under control. You know what I mean? It kept these people down, kept them down. From Saddam Hussein to Assad in Syria to Mubarak in Egypt.
Who's the Libya guy?
Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Who came clean later on. And the Shah in Iran. But he was bad. I mean, they're all bad. They're all dictators. And he was our friend, gave us good oil concessions. I mean, I tell my guys, women in 1978 in Iran wore blue jeans and lipstick and went to the shopping mall. It was a cosmopolitan country. It was very westernized. I mean, women wore bikinis, okay? And so as we're exporting Western culture to a Muslim nation, there were a lot of people there that didn't like that. And I understand that because our culture in the United States can kind of slutty, you know what I mean? We kind of have this, just turn on MTV, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not Ozzie and Harriet or Leave It to Beaver from the 1950s and 60s, you know? or even, Happy Days. Yeah, I'm probably talking about shows you might not know about.
I've seen Happy Days.
Okay, yeah.
You would think of traditionals in the Middle East who put traditionals in America to shame.
Yeah.
Seeing that,
True.
What's their reaction? Even though I'm not saying they're in the right at all, but it's
Right.
just cause and effect there.
Well, it leads to this Islamic revolution, and by the Ayatollah Khomeini, and they take our embassy, which is American soil in Tehran. And if you haven't seen this movie, I totally recommend this to everybody watching. This is Argo. Okay, Argo is the story. They took about 50 American hostages, and these are civilians, not Marines. They're civilians. These are diplomats. On the day that happened, and they blindfolded our people, handcuffed them, 6 Americans snuck out of the back of the embassy in Tehran and made it to the Canadian ambassador's house and knocked on the door. There is a revolution. They have our embassy. It's chaos. They snuck out, made it over there, and he let them in. The Iranians don't know they're gone. There's 6 Americans missing. It took them a while to figure it out. So the CIA puts together this mission to get them out without the Iranians knowing. It's a fabulous story, and it was all classified until this movie came out. You want to know the story?
Yeah.
So the CIA guy pretends that he's a movie producer. And they get somebody to write a script for him. Like, they got to be legit here because he's going into Iran on an airplane. He's pretending he's Canadian because nobody hates the Canadians, right? So he pretends he's a Canadian movie producer. We want to use Iran as a backdrop for this science fiction movie called Argo. Have a whole script and everything. And so he goes into Tehran, has to go through all this. He's a CIA agent dressed up, I think his last name's Sanchez. And he brings in with him fake identities for these 6 Americans that are hiding out. And by this time, the Iranians have figured out there's 6 missing. So they're on high alert. And so one of the one of the 6 is like the director. One's the lead actor. One's the lighting person, the casting. You know what I mean? Like, he gives them all these intricate IDs and backstories. And then they got to make it out. So one guy goes in and 7 come out. And he gets them out. And because it's classified, we bring these Americans home, we give Canada all the credit. And so for decades, people thought the Canadians had saved these 6 Americans. Well, in part, the Canadian ambassador did, by letting them come in and put his own life at risk. And so when they declassified it and they made this movie, Ben Affleck plays the CIA agent. It's fabulous. Argo. Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm a huge movie buff, so I've only mentioned a few.
What a story.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah, so they do a really nice job showing you what the revolution was like that day when they took our embassy, which is an act of war. And so I'm old enough to remember, guys, when there were protests in the streets in New York City burning Iranian flags. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, people were pissed. Okay, so Soviet Union invades Afghanistan. 1979. This is interesting as well. So the first Russian troops into Afghanistan came in on civilian aircraft in civilian clothes into Kabul airport, which is now famous.
Yeah,
from our
Abbey Gate.
From our withdrawal. And so they would come in on civilian flights, and they stored weapons. There's no they don't do scanners and stuff like that back then. And once enough of them get in, they take control of the airport and then fly in their military aircraft into Kabul. And that's how the Soviets invaded.
That's like a Trojan horse.
Absolutely. It's
attack.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Okay, so.
See, they learned something from history.
Yeah, absolutely. So this smells opportunity for the Americans. Because when we were fighting in Vietnam, who was arming the North Vietnamese communists? Russia and China. When we were fighting in Korea, who was arming the communists? Russia. Oh, now the Russians are fighting in Afghanistan. Oh, opportunity. We can arm their enemy. Now, one of the things we should have learned from history here is that when the Soviet Union invades a Muslim country, fighters from all over the Middle East came in to fight the Russians. People from Egypt, people from Jordan, people from Syria, people from Saudi Arabia. One of those from Saudi Arabia was Osama bin Laden and his camp, right? The Al-Qaeda stands for the camp. Mm-hmm. So you had all these fighters, and if you pull them all together under one name, it's called the Mujahideen. And so we start giving them shoulder-fired missiles. We give them all kinds of weapons. They're fighting the Soviets. They're shooting down their helicopters. The war lasts 10 years. And it coincides 79 to 89. 89 is when the Soviet Union begins to collapse. We bankrupted them. You know what I mean? And they were caught in a quagmire. Now, Soviet Union borders Afghanistan. So when we go there in 2001, we're doing it from the other side of the planet. We tried for 20 years. They tried for 10. Neither one was successful. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we got to learn from history. Now, back to the Mujahideen. So that's 79. Iran becomes our enemy. Reagan gets the hostages out when he's inaugurated, scares them. You've got kind of this Iran-Contra affair thing going on, running weapons for hostages and stuff like this, which is a whole nother subject. But so how did 9/11 happen? So it kind of builds up. There's terrorism throughout the 80s. There's Islamic terrorism, 70s, 80s. We got aircrafts being hijacked. It really starts to ramp up. You had Gaddafi in Libya shot. They exploded a Pan Am flight over Lockerbie, Scotland. I think it was 1988. And then Reagan blew up Gaddafi's house. But Gaddafi wasn't there. Okay. They said his daughter was there. Reagan went on national TV and said, we traced these explosives from Pan Am flight, over 200 Americans on that flight. They were targeting Americans. And then there was Beirut. Lebanon's going through a civil war in the 80s. So you guys probably have some friends that are Lebanese Christians. And you know the Stephen family and so forth, right? Mm-hmm. These are Lebanese Christians. There's a lot of Christians, a lot of Muslims in Beirut, and there's a civil war going on. We try to be peacekeepers. And so Reagan sends over Marines to Beirut to try and keep the peace. The French send troops over to Beirut to try and keep the peace. And we've got our barracks there where hundreds, I don't know how, maybe 1,000 Marines are, and somebody drives a truck bomb up in front of the barracks. 281 Marines will perish. Simultaneously, the French will get hit. 57 French will die. Our response, this is probably the worst, terrorist attack against our military. And it's awful. You're just like, what the hell, man? We're over there trying to keep peace. And so what did? We pulled out. We got out of there. The response, wherever we were attacked over there, we left. You guys familiar with Black Hawk Down?
Yeah.
Yeah. So started under Bush as a humanitarian mission.
Yeah, Mogadishu.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to feed. There's famine going on. There's these warlords are, ruling over Somalia, and we're bringing in food. We use the army. Bush sent the army in. It was crazy. CNN had cameras set up on the beach as our army's coming in under the cover of darkness because they didn't know whether they would get attacked, and CNN's on the beach. Like, what the hell are you doing? Okay, but they didn't attack our troops. That would be stupid. Okay, so this was a humanitarian mission. And these groups started attacking us. As you get to the 90s, you got to go back to the Gulf War. Okay, this is where we become the enemy, is in the Gulf War. Because we helped the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, 79 to 89, we're good. We're not an enemy. The Soviet Union collapses, we don't have an enemy. It's great. I remember being alive during that time. It's like, who do we hate? I guess we don't hate anybody. It was cool. President Clinton meeting with Boris Yeltsin, the new president of Russia. They're kicking back some vodka, and having laughs, and it's like, man, this is pretty cool. Well, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Now, in the 80s, Saddam Hussein attacked Iran. Iran and Iraq are right next to each other, right? So in the 80s, if Saddam Hussein attacks Iran, who are we going to side with? Iran held our hostages for 440. We're going to support Saddam Hussein against Iran. Great opportunity to get those bastards back, right? So we help him. All right, now this is controversial, guys. I mean, you have a hard time getting people to admit this, but
bring it on.
We're going to supply Saddam Hussein with poisonous gas to use against Iran. Sarin gas, which later he will use on the Kurds, which are in the north of Iran, of Iraq. Well, in the north of Iran too, against what essentially his own people. This is horrifying. So this war goes on between Iran and Iraq for a few years. Nobody really wins. It's just awful. Okay, so we were fighting with the Mujahideen, helping the Mujahideen. Now we're helping Saddam in the 80s against our enemy, Iran. Okay, hopefully you guys can stay with all this. Saddam Hussein, who has the 5th largest army in the world in 1989.
Wow. That's amazing.
He invades his tiny neighbor Kuwait, which sits on the top of the Persian Gulf there, and they have a ton of oil, and he takes it over. George Herbert Walker Bush, Bush 41, says, "We will not stand for this aggression against the Kuwaiti people." What? Where's Kuwait? It's like Vietnam.
Yeah.
Nobody knew where's Kuwait? What do you mean? We have some kind of special relationship with these people? No. Obviously, it's about oil, right? So the real fear is, if we don't do anything to Saddam here, he's going to invade Saudi Arabia. If he invades Saudi Arabia and wins, he's going to control like a third of the world's oil. So Saudi Arabia is shaking in their shoes right now. They're like, holy crap, dude, what's going to happen to us? Well, you know who is from Saudi Arabia is Osama bin Laden. His father, Mohammed bin Laden, was a great man. When they discovered oil over there, I don't know if he was a great man. He was a very successful man, one that got along well with Americans. He had 11 wives. So Osama was just one of his, one of many children. So maybe he felt, I don't know what turned him into a freaking maniac, but anyhow, he's like, hey, King, Saudi Arabia, the Mujahideen defeated the Soviet Union. We can defeat Saddam Hussein. Let us come in to Saudi Arabia, the Mujahideen, fighters from all over the Middle East, and we'll kick him out of Kuwait and make sure that he can't invade Saudi Arabia. And then the king had another option, the Americans, and a coalition, the British, the Americans, and guys, it was brilliant. I mean, George Herbert Walker Bush's team, Secretary of State George Shultz, was it Shultz? Baker, Howard Baker. They put together a coalition of nations. They got Muslim nations, they got the British, they got the Americans. So it didn't look just like the infidels were coming in. We had Muslims fighting alongside us. So it was a brilliant diplomatic effort, the Gulf War. What was Desert Storm or Desert Shield became Desert Storm. So the buildup took 6 months in Saudi Arabia. Ooh, there's a problem. You're putting American troops on Saudi soil. You know who else we have in the U.S. Army and the U.S. military is American women on Saudi soil. Are they covered? Are they wearing scarves over their heads? Okay. And many Saudis believe, many Muslims believe that Saudi Arabia, obviously where Mecca is holy ground. So you're bringing the infidels in here to do your bidding instead of using Muslims to do your bidding. This is where we become the enemy. In 1990. Okay, when the infidels came. Now, the fighting only lasted 100 hours, right? I mean, it was like we just obliterated Saddam's army, kicked him out of Kuwait. And we didn't finish the job because that was not the mission. The mission was just to get him out of Kuwait. So we had to go back. We didn't have to go back. We did go back in 2003. While we were in Afghanistan, we went back to Iraq and finished off Saddam. But, which was a mistake, in my view. I supported it at the time, but listen, Saddam, for as bad as he is, we knew him. Like, we could deal with this guy. And he kept the radicals. He's a military dictator. He's not an Islamic dictator. He's not a religious fanatic. He kept the religious fanatics under control in his country. And he protected the Christians. There used to be a lot of Christians in Iraq. They're like 1% of the population, but still it's quite a few. The Christians never caused them any problems. They just want to live their life. You know what I mean? So he protected them. So did Assad in Syria. He protected Christians. So did Mubarak in Egypt, tended to protect the Christians. These dictators, the Christians were harmless. They're not going to do anything. They're not terrorists. They just want to worship Jesus and live there, you know? And so when we get rid of these dictators, what happened when we got rid of Saddam? Well, we went there 2003, right, to finish the job. By 2006, we're caught in a quagmire. Why? When Americans showed up to fight in Iraq in 2003, guess what happened? Fighters from all over the Middle East came to kill Americans, just like the Mujahideen did in Afghanistan. They didn't wear uniforms. You didn't know who was good and bad. I mean, Saddam's army basically took off their uniforms, melted into society. They knew they couldn't beat us. So by 2006, our guys are losing limbs, Humvees, IEDs. I mean, it's bloody. And the war becomes very unpopular by 2006. And we do a surge with General Davis Petraeus. It starts to work. We changed our tactics. Our tactics were not good. And they weren't allowing us to win. I mean, we're fighting a limited war over there. So Obama runs for president in 2008, and he says, I'm getting us out of Iraq. I mean, he ran on it, and he did it. By 2011, all American troops are out. Well, what came in and what replaced that?
ISIS?
ISIS. So what we got was worse than what we had. Okay? Libya. This is under Obama and Hillary Clinton. Gaddafi, when we invaded Iraq, because Iraq hadn't attacked us, he's shaking in his shoes. He's like, oh, man. Because after 9/11, the Bush doctrine is you're either with us or you're against us. How are we doing on time? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Bush said you're either with us or against us. And then we invade Iraq they didn't attack us. This is a preemptive war. I supported it. I was wrong. Okay. Gaddafi comes clean. He's like, man, I don't want to be your enemy anymore. You want to come into my country? You want to come in and make sure I'm not building weapons of mass destruction? Come on in. I don't want to. Well, Hillary and Obama said, well, you're a piece of shit and you got to go. So these rebels, we're going to overthrow Gaddafi. We're going to help them. This is like 2011, 12, somewhere.
It was definitely a decent period after Saddam.
Yeah. And so we use the Navy. We don't send troops over there, but we're using cruise missiles and stuff like that to help these rebels. Well, who are these rebels? Are they better than Gaddafi or are they worse than Gaddafi? Well, it turns out they're a bunch of freaking radicals, but we want to get rid of Gaddafi. Okay, so he's murdered in the streets of Tripoli, right? And what's going on with Libya today? It's a failed state. There's no government that controls the entirety of Libya. It's a failed state. And so as we defeated ISIS a few years ago, mostly in Iraq and Syria, they just set up in Libya. You know what I mean? It's horrible. Okay? Now, so Egypt was one as well. So, I mean, they overthrew their dictator too, and then you got the Muslim Brotherhood there. I mean, I could go through a timeline with you, but, and then there was Assad in Syria. And so you guys are both familiar with Benghazi, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So Gaddafi's overthrown. He had a big military, and he had a lot of weapons. So what's going to happen to these weapons after we help overthrow Gaddafi? Who's going to get those weapons? Well, basically what happened with Benghazi, guys, this was a CIA gun running operation. Okay, the U.S. ambassador is there, the CIA is there, and they're working with these rebels to get these weapons to send them to Syria to overthrow another dictator, Assad, which, by the way, happened last
Yeah, that just happened.
Yeah. Finally.
He's not dead, though, is he?
No, he got out. But the guy that's in charge is a former Al-Qaeda guy, right? Or former ISIS guy.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, the difference is, one big difference is that ISIS is Sunni. Al-Qaeda is Sunni. Iran is Shia. But
It's so funny how little that matters to us,
Yeah.
but to them it's everything.
Yeah, so Assad was an ally of Iran. And when this is what's helped with that peace deal that Trump's put together. Okay? Because Iran is a state sponsor of terror. They fund Hamas, they fund Hezbollah, they fund that group in Yemen. It'll come to me. So they fund these terrorist groups. Iran does. And they had an ally in Assad in Syria. Now that's gone. Iran is isolated. And then, of course, we had the balls to go over there and bomb their nuclear facilities, which we've been talking about this for 20 years. Like, should we take out their nuclear facilities? Now, the Israelis kind of set it up, and then we brought it home, right? Kind of thing with the Moabs, the bunker buster bombs and stuff like that.
That was something.
Yeah, I was actually traveling in Europe when that went down.
Oof.
I'm like, oh
wow.
yeah. But it seems like it's working because these terrorist groups are starting to fold. You know what I mean? Hezbollah is weakened. Hamas is definitely weakened.
It's just dicey.
I know. I hope, I pray. For the Palestinians, for the Jews, for the region, for the world, I hope it works. It's tough, man. You're asking people, pretty radical people, to lay down their arms.
Right.
But it would be the best thing.
Man.
Yeah.
That's a history lesson right there. That is quite.
That's honors Middle East.
Yeah. I actually
there.
start my classes with that now because I don't have time. I have a semester to go from 1919 to present day. And I realized a few years ago that all these kids are born after 9/11. And from 4 years ago, their whole lives, we had been at war in Afghanistan, and they have no idea why.
It's so hard. Middle East is so hard for us to comprehend because they're so different in the way they live.
Yeah.
And there's so many different countries, and not all of them like each other.
Yeah.
And some of them do like each other. And like the Sunni and Shiite, or it's like, to us, you're just Iraq, Iran, Jordan. But to them, it's completely different.
It's the old Catholic Protestant thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Fought a lot of wars over
Good
that.
comparison.
Yeah.
Very good comparison.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Or if you're Islam, you're looking at that like, you guys are the same. Why are you fighting?
Right.
And we think the same.
Yeah.
But in reality, we just don't know them, and they don't know when they say that about Catholic Protestant.
Yeah. Well, we've taken advantage of it for sure. Because Iran has kind of become that main, as Bush called, the axis of evil, But yeah, I think seriously, just reconsidering, there's a reason why there are dictators over there. And I know that sounds horrible to say, but that keeps the radicals under control. It really does. They haven't gone through a reformation like we do, just the new covenant with Jesus, as Christians have gone through. We don't live under Old Testament law anymore.
Right.
And it's like they didn't go through the Enlightenment.
Right. Yeah. And groups like the Taliban, they're just ass backwards, man. And it's horrible for their people, unless you're one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So you are entering your 26th season as the head man,
Yep.
head coach of Bishop Carroll baseball.
Yeah.
I didn't know this. You're the winningest coach in City League history.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
it's been a good run. I think I'm obviously
26
way
years. So
down.
you started in 99.
2000 was my first year.
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess
It makes sense.
26.
Been there a
lose
long
track,
time,
yeah.
and it seems like, at least when I was there, every team was good. A lot of winning seasons.
Yeah, I mean the City League baseball, man, it's baseball's become a country club sport. It's so expensive. You have these academies and so forth. I mean, parents will pay $2,000.
The travel scenes taking over.
Yeah. Now it's $2,000 a year, but it's year round if you want. You know what I mean? Obviously, a lot of kids play 2-3 sports and stuff like that. But I've been really fortunate. West side of Wichita has a lot of baseball with West Urban being over there, and it's just kids and families grow up doing it. So still have a lot of players. The numbers are down. I mean, I think my biggest class ever was 2006. I had 42 freshmen come out. I'm lucky.
Whoa.
I'm lucky if I get 22, 23. I'm lucky freshmen.
Damn.
So it's changed a lot. A lot of them moved to soccer or just don't play sports anymore. But yeah, I've been really blessed to be hired at Bishop Carroll. The whole reason I got into teaching was baseball. But I fell in love with this history stuff, and the political science, and so I go to work every day and really enjoy it.
What are you teaching these days? 'Cause you said you're not teaching War and Peace anymore.
Well, it's an elective. You got to have enough students sign up for it. But I'm teaching the honors classes now, and so I that eats up 3 of the hours I teach. I'm the department chair now, so I only teach 5 hours. So I'm kind of limited.
If you did something for post-grads,
Yeah,
I'd be there for that.
yeah. Well, you can always tune into my YouTube channel. And
Yeah, I was looking
learn a
at
lot,
that.
Right. Yeah,
I watched some too.
Yeah, that's Mr. Ebright for anybody watching, but on YouTube you'll find it. But the production value is not as good as what you guys do. I tell you. It's just me standing in front of a group of kids.
You get yourself a Blake Reed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I actually I didn't have time to look at it. I was doing like a Google search. What's the best way to record a lecture? Because what I'm doing right now is it's okay. It does the job for kids that miss school and need to see what I talked about. But I do have 153 subscribers, and
More than us.
I'll
More
talk
than us.
I'll talk.
You're doubling us,
You're
I
gonna
think.
get there. You're gonna get there. I promise. Especially after this video, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right.
I'm kidding. No, but it's I think there are people that former students and then friends that because I'll ask my students. All right, I posted a video last night and there was 2 kids missing. Did you guys watch it? And they're like, no. And I said, well, I had 4 views. I guess it wasn't you. It was somebody else. So
Well,
hopefully it's good stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked what I saw.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, Charlie, this was a blast. Thank you
Yeah,
so
it's a
much
lot
for
of fun.
taking the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you are a wealth of knowledge.
You are. You
I
are.
appreciate that. Yeah. I love to read, and I obviously love movies. So, check out those ones we talked about.
Will do. And we should definitely do this again.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah, it was a great pleasure.
Awesome.
Love talking.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. That's all I had. Do you have
Okay.
anything for us?
No, I wish you the best with the show, and I might have a couple ideas for you about maybe some other people that in town that might be good.
Hell yeah.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Well-
So, wish you all the best and good job. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This is a treat.
Thanks.